So you can see two of us here on the screen, and with me is Nicole Lovejoy. And I love working with this person. If you are a professional, like a therapist of any sort, or a coach or a consultant, you know you need a good team around you for referrals. And you also need strong peers who can assist you in your own growth and in your own perspective. And Nicole is one of those for me. And she's somebody that I constantly send clients to. And in a moment, we'll tell you why we share so many clients. And that's kind of what sparked us coming together and making this recording for you. So, Nicole specializes in relationship patterns, and she backs that up with cognitive behavioral therapy. She backs that up with dialectic behavioral therapy, and she brings a specialty of hypnosis therapy into her work. And I personally just took notice of her working with her one-to-one on a pattern that I had reoccurring that I didn't understand. And I didn't know why it kept holding me back, but I could feel it. And I went to her, and within seconds of walking in her office and sitting down with her, it was evident. And she called it out. And I could see it in black and white as she drew it. And it was like, that's it. Now, what do we do about it? And within 3 or 4 sessions, through the hypnosis, through the talk therapy, we had zapped it. So that's another thing I really respect about Nicole is she's not about this elongated, over time, stretched out process. She wants to get in, assist you to find those things that are maybe a speed bump or a hurdle or a stuck point, and assist you to find your way around it, through it, over it, how to smash it, whatever it is that you're going to do. She not only has this background, but she is an LCSW. She has a private practice that she's continually learning and growing from. And so I'm really proud and excited to introduce her as a co-facilitator of what we're about to do here together. How's that, Nicole?
Oh, it's an honor to be here with you. You and I have been talking about this for a very long time. So this project that you and I are working on has been a long time coming. And so just to take a minute to introduce you to the audience. So I too have had the pleasure of working with you professionally. And what you bring to the table is wisdom and the ability to just laser and hone in on and seeing someone's strengths and attributes. And also you're able to see the blocks of where people are getting snagged that are preventing them from really stepping into their leadership. And so the work that I have been able to do with you professionally has really propelled me as I think not only as a business owner, but also as my profession as a therapist, as a social worker. And your background of you're a master certified coach. You have a background in neuroscience, so you understand the mind-body connection, which is so important and invaluable. And then your primary audience, and I think that where our world blends together is your primary audience is working with empowering women and helping them up level their lives, really empower themselves into a leadership position. And you also, something else that is so important and what you bring to the table is you really have an understanding of the relationship dynamics that get people in trouble, that people can kind of get trapped in these relationship patterns. And so you understand that dynamic of the codependent and the narcissist, or the empath and the narcissist, or the empath and the energy vampire. And really what you and I have talked about is that right now on our planet, this is the time for us to be addressing and healing our relationships. And we are seeing this not only on a macro level, we're seeing that in all the social movements that are happening right now. We are seeing that politically big time this year. We are seeing that environmentally. We are seeing that in religion. It is so in our face right now that this is the time for us to heal our relationships. And what we're seeing out there in the world on a macro level, you and I are seeing individually show up in our offices.
Day in and
So,
day out. That's right. And
day in
and you
and day
know, I did interview you for one or two of the articles I was writing for the Worldwide Coaching Easing a year or so ago. However, we've both listened to shared clients who work with both of us, and they keep saying, you guys need to do something together.
in.
And
Yes.
so we looked at the pattern. What's the common pattern here? And I think you just said it really well. So if you are listening to us talk, what we've identified are women who have deep hearts. They want to make an impact. They want to take more control of their lives. And maybe they're actually highly functioning as entrepreneurs or as corporate citizens or somewhere in their community. However, there's this underbelly, this continual cycle of what might feel like discomfort, dysfunction, whatever you want to name it. There is a pattern that's almost like it's like someone's grabbed onto their ankle and won't let them go.
Right.
And they want to just release themselves from that. And so we're working in tandem because I know our CEO said this really well one day. He came in and was shaking his head in a boardroom as I was waiting for him to come in so we could chat. And he was like, Lynn, if your personal life is in the crapper, it shows up at work. And we see that, or if your professional life is in the crapper. I have a client in back east who left a high paying TV producing job, but his professional life felt like it was in the crapper as far as how he was treated and what the culture was. And it influenced the way his daughter experienced him. So this thing about relationships that you've hit on is so important, and right now at a dire, systemic,
Right.
raging, concerning level.
Right. Well, and the numbers are staggering. Once you and I really dove in to the research behind it, it's
Staggering. Well, let's share our audience with our audience what we found out. Should we do that?
Yes, let's do. Okay.
So we found a pandemic under a pandemic, or at least didn't find it. We didn't invent it, but we realized it and named it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that this is the real problem at hand.
Right. So let's advance to the next screen and let's talk about that, because the question we have is, what would you call a robot-like organism that harmed people and things, that would systemically exploit and over suck the life out of energy and things and people, and knowingly do this? If you had such a harmful robotic organism as this, what would you call it? And, we're not talking about a virus. We are actually talking about something that looks like a human and yet acts in a very sinister, exploitive, harmful manner. And what you have heard before, this term will sound familiar when we say this is what we're talking about, is a narcissist or a narc. And that word has come up more and more in social media, in our news feeds, in our day-to-day conversation. That word is just exploding. And social scientists like Nicole have certain names for this. I'm going to put one. One is APD, right? Which stands for antisocial personality disorder. And there are some other terms. So what are other words for a narcissist or a narc?
Sure. So the narcissist or the narc, there are several terms for it. There's the antisocial personality disorder, and that is a term out of the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, the DSM-4 and the DSM-5. And it's from a subset in the diagnostic book called cluster B personality traits. And these cluster B personality traits are really the personality traits that you're speaking to, Lynn. And that's going to be the antisocial personality disorder, which the layperson would commonly refer to as the psychopath, or not the psychopath, the sociopath. So other cluster Bs are going to be borderline personality disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and there's psychopathy, and it's really a spectrum, very much like Asperger's or autism.
Okay.
That people can have a few traits, but really what you and I are speaking to is deeper in the spectrum, that are more these personality disorder types.
Right. And what you and I deal with are typically not the narcissists, but the individuals who've been harmed.
That's
And there's
correct.
a term for that too. So if you feel like you've been treated poorly by a religion, if you feel like you've been treated poorly by a spouse, if you feel like you've been treated poorly by a boss, someone who seems narcissistic, then there is a name for that. And it comes with the word abuse. And what would be, is there a technical term for that, Nicole?
Um, so say that one more time.
Would that be called narcissistic abuse, or is there a better technical term?
No, I think that that's really what we're seeing right now, and what's coming to light is narcissistic abuse. And how that shows up in my office, and the diagnosis that I would see as a clinician, would be CPSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that's ultimately the fallout of being in relationship with these types, these narcissists, or the sociopath or the psychopath.
And that's sometimes one of the entry points where I introduce people to you, because as a coach, even a master's certified coach with neuroscience background and a lot of studies in human development, developmental psychology, and leadership coaching, I still do not have the capacity nor the desire to diagnose, because I don't have an expertise. That's not my area of expertise. And you do. And sometimes it's really helpful to send people to you so that they can start to get a sense from an authority who knows what she's talking about. Am I really dealing with a narcissist? Can I really say that I have been abused in this situation? And you so truthfully, honestly, and candidly help them see yes or no.
That's correct. And I think it's really hard for people to start to wrap their mind around what's been happening. Oftentimes, what happens is we project our own values, our own morals, our own worldview onto other people, onto the narcissist. And so it's really hard to believe that somebody lacks empathy, lacks a conscience, and that they're intentionally trying to control, manipulate, hurt, to get what's called their narcissistic supply.
Right. It's just so hard. And because we get in it gradually, and it just starts, it happens over time, that the fact that eventually we go, why do I not have energy? And we look at ourselves instead of the environment.
Yeah, and it really does happen very gradually, because in the beginning of a relationship with a narcissist, they are very charismatic, and they are very skilled at pulling somebody in to gain control of them. And so in the beginning of a relationship, it feels really what I've had clients describe as like magical.
Yes.
The chemistry can be incredible. And what the narcissist embodies is what Christiane Northrup and Dodging Energy Vampires calls malignant intuition, that they know exactly what to say in order to gain control. They know the perfect words. It's like everything that you've been longing to hear your whole life. that's the script that they are now using to pull you in. And it's not till you're enmeshed with this person that their true colors really start to come out.
Right. And then you doubt it because it was so good and you think it could be so good again. And you project your good intentions on this person because there was a period that seemed magical. But this is a big problem. Let's start looking at the numbers, Nicole.
Yeah.
So if you look at this, like 1 in 10 people, so 1 in 10 people have this cluster B personalities disorder that you were talking about. 1 in 25 have antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, which can include both sociopath and psychopath titles. So if you look at the numbers here, and by the way, that's 13.1 million people. That means 1 in 5. They're estimated over 158 million people in the US affected by narcissistic abuse, affected by the harmful influences of being with a narcissist. And you can read what's on the screen here. Pretty stunning. That's a lot of people. And that's one reason why it's becoming a systemic problem. And we're calling it a pandemic under a pandemic, because if you look at it, narcissism, devoid of empathy, not caring about other people, having a lack of capacity to be a full functioning adult. You look like one, you can convince people you are one, but you are leaving damage and carnage wherever you go. And people can't exactly put their finger on what it is, but they know it feels terrible and they can see their lives deteriorating. But you just seem to be flourishing like that vampire while you're sucking, if you're a narcissist, the juice out of someone. They're starting to shrivel and don't know why. And let's just look at the next slide too, because I think this visual depiction is a good way to see it. Again, you can see in the United States, the perceived national character, narcissism, is high up there. You can see the global ratings of trait narcissists. The US is high. How common is it? You can see on the bottom in the pie charts. And then let's go to the next slide, because Nicole, I don't think if somebody's listening to this, I don't think we have to convince them that it is a phenomenon, it's happening. But let's talk about narcissism, or my first narcissist 101. And I'm going to have Nicole listen to this because I don't believe I've told her this story before. And then you can break it apart if you want to with your professional or with your professional experience and professionalism. You can say, okay, this is what's happening.
Got it.
So I was a school teacher who left teaching to have a baby, and a year or two later, I came back. And I had done such a good job that my principal wanted me in this key role. And there was a new teacher that had been hired recently, and she came to see me. Now, I was teaching a second, third grade split, and this teacher was teaching a fifth or sixth grade, which I typically had taught. But when this principal wanted me back and I wanted to go back, he only had this split, but he was like, Lynn, I'm giving it to you because I trust you. I sold all the parents on this experiment. They are gung-ho. They want to have you be their child's teacher. And so I was so excited. And one day this teacher walked in before or after school, I don't remember, before the kids came or after the children had left. And she just kind of winked and smiled and said, hey, I hear you're a rock star. Thought I'd come over and introduce myself. We haven't worked together. And she chatted me up a little bit. And I thought, well, this is friendly. And then she said, hey, are you much of a reader? She looked at my books and things. And I told her, yes. She says, here's my favorite series. In fact, I'll bring one tomorrow. You can borrow it. So I thought, okay, this person's really reaching out. I had not invited it, so I wasn't as charmed, but I felt her really reaching out. So I thought, okay, that's great. And then during the year, she would wink at me during lunch. That we had different lunch hours, but she'd say something and she'd have this little bit of banter, and I could tell she was trying to bring me in. For some reason, I didn't feel like we jived, and so I didn't become super friendly with her.
Sure.
And over time, as I won awards and accolades, and more parents wanted their children to come to my class, and I moved up into the fifth and sixth grades because that's where most of my experience was. And that's where I really found my stride. I was in her territory, and all of a sudden, there were little rumors being said and innuendos about my teaching and about who I was personally. And there started to be personal attacks, professional attacks, to the point where I eventually chose to leave education. I could see what I was doing. I was speaking nationally, I was making presentations, and I was actually trying to warn educators that we were seeing an onslaught of the effects of lack of parenting. Now, couldn't just say it was narcissism or post traumatic syndrome. I didn't have a diagnosis, but I could see that more and more parents were not prepared to have children. And they were sending these children who were only half parented to school. And I was dealing with more behaviors that were requiring parenting and giving these children emotional intelligence than I was attending to the curriculum that I was responsible for.
Right.
And so I was speaking and talking about this, and she used that as a wedge, that I was a traitor to education, that I wasn't an innovator, that I wasn't seeing the future. Because I warned, I said, charter schools and private schools will eat our lunch if we don't start paying attention to educating the entire child and breaking out of this corner on the market that we have, and just assuming that public schools are always going to be the number one go-to, because the needs are bigger and we're not meeting them. And eventually, this woman was treating me and my students so poorly that I decided that I needed to leave education. And for me, that was pivotal.
Wow.
Pivotal because it started a career where I'm earning 4 times, 5 times what I did. I'm getting to have an international reach where I was only having 30 small bodies at a time for just 9 months of the year. And now I can really bring my mission and my purpose forward. So I was grateful for that. But that was an indication to me that some of these people can be so charismatic. This person literally was a bully to me, and she had 6 other teachers, and eventually persuaded my principal, who had brought me on as this award-winning rock star to be one of his key teachers. He was eventually questioning me.
Wow.
And I realized that it didn't feel good, but afterward, I could say that was my first blatant experience with a narcissist who tried to charm the socks off me, and then eventually became a bully and attacked me and tried everything that she could with her circle of influence to make my life miserable.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that story. I'm so sorry that that was your experience. The thing with narcissists is you're either with them, supplying them narcissistic supply, or you become a threat to them. And once you become a threat to them, then they become a bully, and they will use whatever means necessary, because they lack the consciousness and the empathy, to discredit and pull you down in the mud. And they usually will get what's called their flying monkeys, right? They'll
Yes,
usually get other people around them to do their bidding for them, right?
that's exactly what happened. Yes.
So they will, and because they are so charming and charismatic, and the ones that are really good can successfully take down a person, because they know how to lie and manipulate and coerce and bully. It's devastating.
It can be. I could see the writing on the wall and decided I needed to leave, and it was hurtful. And until I got out of it, I couldn't heal and move on. But I bounced back quickly because I didn't stay in it long enough.
Yes.
But the
Yes.
flying monkeys were flying. And years later, students who watched this from afar who didn't know what I was going through have reached out through the miracle or the plague of Facebook and social media, and either shared stories of how they were harmed by this teacher,
Wow. Hmm.
children, sixth graders being bullied by this individual, or how they could sense something was wrong. And now that they were adults, they're curious as to, why did you leave? We loved you. We were looking forward to having you be our teacher. And so later on, there's this trail of not just me, but like you said, anybody in this sphere that didn't play the game or didn't fit. Like if these kids didn't have the right amount of wealth in their family background, or their parents weren't suck ups to certain teachers, they did not get noticed. And in fact, they got bullied. So that's also a part of the dynamic, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's the thing that we think about when we look at the numbers. It's the amount of people that are being impacted, and that's why we're looking at this as a pandemic, as another pandemic, is
Yeah.
because you can see with this one person, the sphere of influence that she had, how much destruction there was and devastation.
Right.
And for you, being the wise person that you are, of course, you were able to see it and get out of it. And also, I'm sure that she, and I say this for myself too, like the narcissists in my life have been some of my greatest teachers.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful to all of them, and I'm also grateful that they're no longer in my life.
Right. They can be a narcissist can point a cathartic direction to us to take,
Yes.
because I needed to move on. I needed to really get my sphere of influence out there. I needed to earn more money as a single parent to provide for my kids. And this was giving me that door. But you have a story too. I want to hear your story.
Sure. And I want to talk to you about one of my clients, because her story really hit me in such a profound way, because I saw the impact of a narcissistic parent on a child. Not so the client of mine was a woman, and she was divorcing a narcissist. And I would say that this person was actually further down the spectrum, and was more sociopathic. And he successfully alienated her son from him, or
Hmm.
from her, and would do things that were just heartbreaking to the children, ultimately, because narcissists, they view children as pawns. They view them as just an extension of themselves that they can control and manipulate um, any situation. And so with this particular situation, she was working really hard in the courts to try and get the children away from him, but it it hadn't happened, and so she had to honor the parent time that was put in place. And he lived out of state, and so the kids were away for the summer. And on the way back, they were supposed to fly back, and he calls her up and says, hey, you know what, the kids have missed their flight. They're not going to be coming home until the next flight, which is in a few hours, and I'll give you a call and keep you posted. Well, in fact, what had happened is he put the kids on that flight. They did not miss the flight. He did that because he wanted the children, these young children, you know, 5 years old and 8 years old, to get off the plane and see that their mother wasn't there. And right about the time that they were landing and deboarding, he calls the young boy's cell phone and says, where's your mom? Is she there to greet you at the airport? And the kids are scared, and no, she's not here. Yep, see, your mom doesn't love you. She doesn't care about you. She couldn't even show up to be at the airport for you. She's with her new boyfriend, and she doesn't love you guys anymore.
Wow.
And eventually, unfortunately, he successfully alienated the son, the older son, but my client was able to terminate the rights to her daughter. And, but the fallout with that it was awful. It was awful. So that was the abuse with the children, but the abuse with her, he would use any means necessary. He had the children go, he took the children into a therapist and coached them to say that she was an alcoholic, which wasn't true. He also filed false, reports with DCFS, the Child Protective Services, all in attempts to slander her and turn the children against her. And so it can be so destructive to a whole family unit, a
So,
whole family unit.
so the whole family was feeling the abuse, the
Yeah.
narcissistic abuse. And that just breaks my heart to think what those children went through and how their minds have been warped.
Yes.
And let's go to the next screen because I'm going to share this. This is such a great, this is Judith E. Glaser's Conversational Intelligence Dashboard. And it shows the neurochemistry of what's going on in conversations. And so if there is someone who's in I protect, which is where narcissists are, they have such a terrible sense of themselves that they're low trusting, they resist connecting with people, they're skeptical because they're stuck in primitive brain. And when they're around us, we get stuck in protecting ourselves because they're attacking us. And what's missing is we don't get to be in the neocortex, so we don't get to be as smart as we want to be. And we don't get to move into the prefrontal cortex, which is on the right-hand side where we can partner with people and co-create and experiment. And Judith's work is showing us here through her organizational anthropology and this dashboard that the harm of having so many narcissists spread their abuse means that we are robbing our future from the co-creative partnership, vulnerability, trusting, prefrontal cortex, feel the heart energies that are so needed for us to progress as a human race.
Right.
But I think you have a spectrum that you could take us through that may bring this into more of a granular fashion. Is that right?
Sure. And these really do complement each other. So with this spectrum, I call this the relationship spectrum. And on the right side of the screen, you can see that it's the narcissist and also kind of the energy vampire. Narcissists need that supply from others in order to survive. And, and even on this side of the spectrum, somebody may have a few traits, narcissistic traits. And then on the very end of the spectrum would be a psychopath. And so there's that range. And on the other side, you see the codependent and empath. And even within that there can be a range as well. And when they're on the extreme end, what we see is an individual that is more of a martyr, that it becomes all about the other person, that they are othering to the point where their needs are no longer in the picture. And really, when we look at having a balanced relationship, what we're looking for and what we're striving for is interdependency, and that is a relationship of love and connection. And when we are in that relationship pattern, that's when we are in the we versus the I. And that's when we are going to be functioning in the prefrontal cortex. When we are on the outsides, of the relationship spectrum, it's going to dysregulate our autonomic nervous system.
So and be stuck somewhere, right?
Yes, exactly. And I really like the work of Ross Rosenberg. He calls this the human magnet syndrome. And typically, somebody who's a narcissist or an energy vampire is going to draw in the codependent or the empath. And because the empaths have such big hearts, that the narcissist and the energy vampire just knows how to play off of that and kind of pull them in and use that to their advantage.
Yes. And so the person who has that big heart and Boy, his work is wonderful. If you haven't looked at Ross's work is terrific. If you haven't looked at the human magnet syndrome and anything we're saying resonates with you, it's a must read. And so Ross, if you ever watch this, hi, you have two fans here. We read
Yes.
and study your work and we watch your videos because you've really tackled the language and the dynamics. And it's really helpful for our clients to use some of your resources. And what we're talking about in the spectrum is people flow back and forth, but really what we're looking for is to come to the middle where we can connect, where we can, and it starts, let's say, a codependent, because that's who we usually work with people who are far over here being knocked out of whack because they've paired up somehow, either by accident or on purpose. Or as Ross would say, there's that attraction that we don't see, but we feel, the invisible pulling us. With a vampire or a narcissist, we start to try to get our sea legs and figure out, what does it mean to take care of me? What does it mean to not take this behavior and put boundaries? It's like you're on wobbly legs. You're trying to figure it out as you go, and it looks a little messy. And it's always nice to have a professional by your side to help you get that equilibrium and these new tested skills. So how do we identify a sociopath?
So let me, I'm actually going to skip to this slide right here.
Okay.
So some of the behaviors of the narcissist or the sociopath, and we're seeing that these terms are kind of interchangeable, that when you hear out there in the world, you're here, the buzzword is narcissist or sociopath, but we're kind of speaking more, they're all kind of interchangeable.
Right.
So how you can kind of start to tell if you are with a narcissist or a sociopath is really how it makes you feel. So, and some of the behaviors that you're going to see from them are going to be patterns of dominance. They manipulate, they use intimidation, they use emotional coercion, withholding, dishonesty. They are very self-centered, extremely, they lack that empathy or that consciousness, and disregard for others. They gaslight, and really gaslighting, the term gaslighting came from that movie Gaslight. And in the movie, this man would, adjust the gas lights and make the woman that he was living with, I think it was his wife or girlfriend, the lights would go off and it was him doing it. And she would be like, oh, did you see that? And then the lights would come back on and he's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see anything go on with the lights. And so that's really where the original term gaslighting came from. But that is something that is kind of one of the narcissist go-to tools to control and manipulate. They will spin things around so fast and make you feel like you are the one with the problem. And so really what it feels like to be in relationship with the narcissist is you really start to question your sanity. And it becomes really, really difficult to kind of sort out what the truth is. It becomes hard to make decisions because you're walking on eggshells and not sure what's going to set the narcissist off. It can also be very detrimental to your self-esteem and self-worth. And really what I see when somebody ends up in my office, when they're being abused from a narcissist, and what brings them in is they are starting to act in ways that are out of alignment with their own values and their own morals. It's almost like this idea that they, being in this negative energy, it just starts to wear a person down, and their defense mechanisms, they can become angry and short-fused and start to think, and the narcissist being so good at gaslighting, they start to think that they're the problem. Maybe I'm the narcissist. Maybe I'm the one with the problem. And so that will bring them into my office, and I'm help people to unpack all that and see, no, what's going on is you've been in an emotionally abusive relationship for a very long time. And this is the consequence of being gaslit. and emotionally abused. And really, the long-term consequences of staying in an abusive relationship is complex PTSD, and I'm seeing a ton of that. And really, what's happening is their nervous system has become so dysregulated that they are just stuck in that survival place.
Right.
And the work is not only untangling from the narcissist and healing the trauma, but then also doing the work of learning how to regulate the nervous system.
Yeah, it's like we have to heal the trauma and get the regulated system down. And I want to put a fine point on something you said. I've watched some of the best narcissists not be completely devoid of empathy, but to have the malignant empathy that Northrop was talking about,
Yeah.
in that they know enough about how people feel, and these are real extreme cases, that they do things that will have harmful consequences.
Right.
That it's like they're so starved for whatever it is they're starved for, attention, power, control, that they will drop that acid into the pool to watch it ripple out. And they kind of know right where to drop it and what kind of acid that will burn for a long time. And so there is a malicious and insanity. I would say it's an insane maliciousness that
Yes.
if you live around that, you do think you're going crazy because you're living with crazy.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And for me in my own personal life, I teach this stuff. I've
Right.
been doing these women's groups for years and was in a relationship with a narcissist and sitting with my own therapist and unpacking all of this and just I feel crazy. I don't know which end is up and which end is down. And she said, Nicole, that is because you are being gaslit. That is the consequence of being in this emotionally abusive relationship. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, oh, yes, of course, this is what I'm teaching other women. But, a skilled narcissist is so good at it that they can even pull in, you know.
Well, and we both are talking about this because we both have experience and we recognize that if we use Ross Rosenberg's model, we're either you or I in relationship with our partners or those people we choose to partner with, we will either take the role of being self-absorbed and more into our own navel lint, or we will take the attachment model and be more caring and giving.
Right.
And that's that magnet, that opposite attracting magnet that Ross is talking about. And
Yes.
so we have real life experience. And the best we want to shoot for is to move into the middle, ourself if we have to, and invite the other person to join us.
That's right.
And
That's
that's where you and I are in our intimate relationships, inviting somebody to come to the middle, that powerful place where we both are, instead of one being one end of the spectrum and the other one evening that out by going too far the other direction.
exactly. It really is, holding the space for both people in the relationship, and that is comes from mutual love and respect and that interdependency.
Yeah, and that really takes time to grow. If you use Kagan's adult development, both people have to be invested in developing into adults to do that. What
Yes.
else do you have for us today that you want to share?
So I want to talk a little bit about the empath. So, um, you know, I I think that one of the things that gets us in trouble is the idea that hurt people. And the type of narcissist that we are talking about is not necessarily born out of a trauma-filled childhood. They were born with a brain that was wired different than you and I, Lynn. And they've actually done brain scans that show that the part of the brain where empathy lives doesn't light up in these individuals. That that they really do lack that consciousness. And so I think that that is hard for for the empath to wrap their mind around.
Yeah, because they don't share that reality.
Exactly. It's hard to believe that there's just people out there who are innately not good people. And and it's something that I struggled with. I had that lens of, hurt people, hurt people. And what I ultimately came to is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how they came to be. What's more important is that the behaviors are not okay. And that's really what we need to take a stand with. And so these beautiful empaths that have these big hearts, the work of Sandra Brown, she wrote the book Women Who Love Psychopaths, and she started a center. It's I can't think of the name of her center, but it's to help heal relationships. And what she has found is that there's this subgroup of empaths, and I think that this is what you and I see quite a bit of. And these
Right.
empaths are, they see the good in everyone. They're generous, they're kind, they're intuitive, they're the leaders, they're the healers, they're out there really making an incredible positive impact in the world. And so, because of this, these traits can also get them into trouble because they see the good in others, and they want to believe that who's in front of them is good, and that they can really help this person heal. And 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 really what the empath needs to really understand is that these people will not change. So it really becomes our work to set boundaries, to call back our power, to hold the space for us in the relationship, and kind of withdraw the supply. And so these, she calls them, Sandra Brown calls them super traits. And Christiane Northrup, in her book Dodging Energy Vampires, calls it the old soul empath. And it really is learning how to balance out the you know the codependent patterns, the poor boundaries, no longer tolerating. If you look here on the screen, you see the shadow side of being the empath is when we're out of balance. And that's when we lose ourselves in relationship. We say yes to the bad and no to the good. We have a hard time asking for help because we think we can just conquer everything ourselves. And underneath that can be sometimes a lack of self-worth and self-esteem. What Ross Rosenberg has called this is he has coined the term self-love deficit disorder. The
I
underneath,
I loved it when he did that because codependency I couldn't figure out what we were trying to label codependent. How come that label, what that title just didn't fit? And then when he said that, I was like, bingo.
that's it. Yep, yep. So and then we're also seeing patterns of perfectionism, and then the caretaker, the rescuers,
Right.
those people that their knee-jerk response when they see somebody in pain or hurting is to just jump to, it's a call to action.
Yeah.
But really, the call to action that you and I see is to stand up and say no, no more. We will no
Right.
longer tolerate these behaviors.
And I've learned that the highest evolved form of the empath is a person who's astute with compassion.
Yes.
And compassion does not cross that line of doing things for people that they could, should, and ought to be doing for themselves. Compassion can see the pain, recognize it, and then either hold the space or say, okay, that looks like that hurts. What's going to happen next? It's almost like it's a higher calling than empathy. It's compassion so that your brain doesn't take on the pain of the person in pain.
Exactly. And that's that neuroscience that I know you understand so well, that when we up level our empathy to compassion, we're literally working from the prefrontal cortex versus the midbrain, and kind of joining them in their pain.
Right.
So being able to see them and hold space for them, but not join them.
So what else do you want to say about this topic?
I think we've said a lot.
We
Um,
have.
I think we should talk about what you and I have been up to.
Yeah, so I'm so excited about this because one of my specialties is assisting leaders to develop themselves to really go to that next level. And human development, behavioral psychology, the neuroscience behind it, I have a proven, it was 4 years in the making with putting all the pieces together. Of course, I've had over 22 years of experience as a coach, but the last 4 years putting the research and the pieces together and testing and testing and testing and coming up with a system for leaders to level themselves up. And once they learn how to do that for themselves, they now understand how do they develop people and support higher levels of performance in those people that they're to be leading, because a leader isn't just somebody who's given a role. A true leader who's someone who uses their role to nurture and grow and to develop the people that are in their teams and in their circle of influence. So we've decided to bring what you do in relationships where you assist people, and I'll let you talk to that, to do that during a month's time. And so let's say it's a 4-week cycle, and the first 4 weeks, you work on relationship patterns, and then you give someone an hour one-on-one session so they can isolate their pattern and work on that. Then the very next week, which is week 3, I do a group session around these concepts of leadership, finding your style markers, because every leader has superpowers. They have these special things about them that they may or may not be aware of. And those are really the levers that, if they just pull on those with ease and elegance, moves the world for them. So we work on that in the 3rd week, and then they have a one-to-one session with me to cover how they are applying that principle. And then we go through the cycle again. And we do this over 6 months, because what we found is after 6 months, not only have they really applied themselves, it's like 6 months of going to boot camp at, say, CrossFit, or 6 months of going to a boot camp where you're really learning how to become a writer. You put yourself into that intensive, and after the 6 months, not only have you shifted, but the people around you have really shifted their perception of who you are and what you're capable of. And you've leveled up in their eyes too. And it takes about 6 months for them to see it. You feel it if you're applying what we're working with you on in the first 30 days. The world around you notices a little slower than that, but by the 6th month, they're going, whoa, what's happened? Maybe by the 3rd month. So I'm excited about that. And we're going to do our first one in February, this inaugural group. We haven't decided yet if we even need to market this very much, because we have a list of people waiting, and we're interviewing those to vet them, to make sure that they're ready to take this on. It takes a commitment of time and energy. It's fun work. It's exciting work. It can be hard work. And they need to be dedicated to making that transformation. They need to be dedicated to doing the work, because we have assignments that they will need to complete to stay accountable to themselves and also to a study buddy in the group. So what would you add?
So I think that the work that I will bring to the table is really taking people into a deep dive into their relationship patterns, and to identify the patterns that are not serving them and that are keeping them stuck, and from really, stepping into their leadership. Um, and so we all have relationship patterns that consist of our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors, and they are, and we become habituated to them, and all of that is being driven by oftentimes our false beliefs, and they will keep us stuck in toxic, unhealthy relationships. And it's not even all relationships. Typically, it might be 1 or 2 people in their life that are wreaking havoc, and we have other healthy relationships in our life, but that one relationship can really be detrimental, not only to their interpersonal life, but also professionally, spiritually, economically. It just creates a negative ripple effect in their life. So by cleaning up their relationships and then you coming in with the leadership skills, I think it's really going to help people up level their lives in a really profound way. You know, as you shared, Lynn, we have clients that we work together with, and I think where our complements really, or where our skill set really complements each other, is I think I love the analogy of the butterfly, where I help them do the work in the, is it
Get into the chrysalis.
the chrysalis, and help them, through that process, and you help people get their wings. And so I think that it really will be a transformative 6 months of going through that chrysalis and then coming out with a beautiful set of wings to really soar and take off in life. And it's important right now. We're needing this, and something that you and I had talked about, and I don't know if it got recorded or not, but when you heal one, help one woman, empower one woman and heal their relationship patterns, it's going to have a profound impact on their community.
Yes, and that's why we're specifically starting this one with women. We both work with both men and women. Mm-hmm. Right now, we can see that women are rising up and addressing this in a way that is transformative. We see that female energy rising, and when it rises and gets its wings and goes through that metamorphosis, then it starts to influence the community, and we're looking to support that. So right now, we're just holding this for women, and they're coming into it, and almost like we've put a call out there, and it was nonverbal, and they heard it, and they're knocking on our doors. But we would do the same for a group of men. We just, again, we have to vet that if you're interested in this boot camp in February 2021, and we are going to probably be continuing these because we're just finding a lot of success together. So you want to contact us. The way to contact me would be to go to soulsalt.com. You can go to send an email to info@soulsalt, SOULSALT.com. You can follow me on Instagram. I post almost daily on Instagram, both as Lynn Christian with one N, as you can see here, or Soul Salt, which is my company, which happened to be named by my clients. I didn't pick that name, but it seems to fit because that's what they called me. The Salt of the Soul is what we work on. Yeah. And you can also follow me on Facebook. I do a Facebook Live typically every Tuesday, and I have a YouTube channel called Soul Salt Coaching. Plus, there are a lot of offerings on my website. So if you want to dip your toe in right now, you might want to take one of our online courses or just want a discovery session, which you can get an intake form. If people wanted to connect with you, Nicole, what's the best way to connect?
So my website is the best way to connect with me, and that's cnicolelovejoy.com. And I do have a few spots open for individual relationship coaching and psychotherapy, and really excited about the group. Really excited about that. One last thing that I did want to say about our boot camp that we're doing is I've done group work for over a decade now, and there is something really magical about group dynamics, that when you come together with the intention of healing, there's something that just lasers through. It's like it just takes one person in the group to do the work. It's almost like you become this unit, and one person will end up doing the work for all of us, and then this person will say something, and then the others will. It's just I feel like I'm not describing it.
It's very synergistic.
That's the word I'm looking for. It's powerful.
It is. And I've seen that in my boot camps. While I might be isolating and honing in and coaching someone in the middle, sort of in the round with the other people watching, everyone is gaining something.
Yes.
And yet the group dynamic of supporting one another, it is a dynamic that is nurturing. It's a community, and it's private. It's confidential. Yep. And so Gosh, I'll be excited to see if anybody wants that. If not, what we hope is that through listening to this dialogue, you've taken one small thing. It just takes one small thing for you to noodle on or for you to apply and make a shift that has meaning for you. Do something for yourself that gives you a little more traction or a little more sanity or a little more courage or confidence or competence. And so think about that right now before we say goodbye. What's that one thing that's landing? And now, as you think about what that is, what can you do in the next 7 hours with that one thing?
Mhm.
And go do something with it, because the work that Nicole and I do, we're not satisfied in just sharing with you. It's what you do with this information and how you transform your life. There, it goes back to that image you used with the caterpillar going into the chrysalis and then coming out with wings and being a whole, stronger, more powerful, elevated creature. That's what we're about. We came here to enliven and enlarge your vision of who you are and what you can achieve. So we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't ask you, take one thing and take it in the next 7 hours into action or thought that changes you or your life. All right, Nicole, thank you so much for joining our forces.
Yes, this is so incredible. I'm really excited about all of this, and I think that this was an important. It's an important topic right now. So
Indeed.
thank you.
Yes.